Hi guys, I don't buy quilt backing. I just find it too expensive. Every time I go to buy some, I think, yeah, I'll get some lovely fabric to go across the back, and then I see the price and I'm like, maybe not. I can do without. I'd rather spend the money on the front of the quilt instead of the back. And I have some back tricks that I use that are perfectly fine, so I kind of don't need to spend the money on the back of the quilt. So today in this video I'm going to show you what I do. I've got 2 examples where I use old sheets, and I've got 3 examples where I piece my back. And today we also need to sandwich together a quilt that I'm working on, so I'll show you the process that I use to quilt. Not to quilt, to piece, no, not to piece, not to quilt, not to piece, but to sandwich this quilt together that I have been working on. So thank you for joining me. My name is Rachel. I obviously make quilts here on this channel, and I want you to be inspired to make your own quilt. And quilting can be expensive, so I think you can really save on the back of the quilt. You don't need to buy the large fabric. I'm going to show you what I do to just cut the costs a little bit and make it more affordable so you can make more quilts and concentrate on the front of the quilts. All right, let's get going. So I might just make some space. I'm going to show you the pieced quilts first. And I'm going to start with one of my oldest quilts, because I made this. This is my first full-size quilt? I think it might be. This might be my first full-size quilt. When I say full-size, I mean queen. My mother showed me how to quilt when I was a child, and I made little doll quilts. I had a Samantha, American girl, because I lived in America when I was a child, and I'm in Brisbane, Australia, filming this now. So I didn't really make large quilts probably until I was about 24, because I made this one just after I met my husband. So the story goes that I went backpacking through Southeast Asia, and I bought fabric, mostly in Vietnam. I bought this fabric on that trip. But I met my husband. He wasn't my husband at the time. I met him over there when I was backpacking. So then when I came home and I made a quilt with all the fabrics that I bought from overseas, we ended up dating, and suddenly I've moved in with him, and this was like our first quilt on our beds. So in that way, it's very sentimental to me, and it's now 20 years old. So it is squares and rectangles, and it is the same design the whole way across, which I love doing, end to end, same pattern. I don't know, I just really love that style. So anyway, let me show you the back of this. It's stripes. It's basically the leftover fabric that I had that didn't make it to the front. So you can see all the patterns that I bought. These 2, this green one, these dragonflies, this one. So, this elephant's here. It wasn't all, I think, from memory, when I came home, and I did add some fabric from Spotlight, like this just brown was just from Spotlight. I have a feeling these dragonflies here, they're gold dragonflies on the yellow. I think that came from Spotlight as well, but the rest are from Vietnam. So I'm probably out of camera, but you can see the quilt. It's simply just pieced strips. And you know what I love about this is that I use this quilt both ways. So sometimes I have it this way, and then when I get sick of that, I just flip it over and I use it this way. So this is on the top, and it's like a beautiful quilt, quilt top, and it is two-purpose. So if this, that's why I love scrappy backs. That one is a real sentimental favourite of mine, and it's so old now that the binding is getting little holes along it, raggedy edges, which I love because it shows that we have loved it, and it's there. That's beautiful. And sometimes now that I've got like more quilts and I, swap them over more regularly, this was on my bed for years and years and years, but now that I have some more quilts and I change them over, sometimes it's in the cupboard, and then I notice that like my daughter has it on her bed. She goes and grabs it. So yeah, it's a really nice quilt and great design and easy design. So next I'll show you this star one. This is much smaller. Okay, I was just experimenting with these big stars. So I have my hand-dyed fabric with Vincent van Gogh fabric. So all the coloured fabric, non-pattern fabric, is hand-dyed fabric that I made myself, and then just paired with a plain grey and the Van Gogh feature fabric, and some batik here. So the back of this quilt. This one's smaller, it's not a queen, but I had a lot of grey, so I used a lot of the grey, but I also had this big rectangle of the orange, so I've kept that on one side, and then the other side, see this? I had some leftover little half square triangles with the grey and the colour. So that must have been for these type of stars. They're all made out of half square triangles, so I've got one strip, I'll hold it the other way actually, one strip down one side that is simply the grey and coloured half square triangles with some more grey. So that one, even though it is mostly grey, it has sections of other feature fabric, which is just from my front. So that's an interesting way to incorporate some of your actual blocks. So if you've got leftover blocks, you can put them in a strip. And this one is the latest one that I've made, so some of you will recognise it because there's a whole playlist of me making this quilt alongside my mother, who also made a quilt with this same scrappy block. So you might recognise this quilt. So on the back of this one, I also wanted to make it scrappy because the front was scrappy. Whoop. So again, it's a similar vibe to the one that I made with my Southeast Asia fabrics. So it's all just the scraps that I had laying around the house, including that Van Gogh fabric again. So a bit of a feature through my quilts, and the leftover navy that I had, and then just some other colours popped in there as well. So there is actually a video where I show you when I make this. So I'll link that one below, and this whole playlist in particular. You can see me make this whole quilt. All right, so that's the pieced ones. I also use old bed sheets from the op shop. That's what we call a thrift shop here in Australia, op shop. Stands for opportunity, I believe, shop. So I have two quilts here, and you might recognise this one from videos as well. This one we made for my son, and that's all filmed, so you can see me make that. This one I made for my daughter just before I started my YouTube channel. So let me show you this one first. This one is, I wanted to practice curves, pieced curves. So it's a quarter circle, and I simply made up the template myself. I drew it on cardboard, cut it out, and used. So it's recently had a wash and then been in the cupboard. So it is scrappy in a way because a lot of the fabrics I already had, and I just wanted to use them. But as you can see, I've just gone for all the really mellow colours and pastels. There is hand-dyed fabric as well as printed fabric. So gorgeous colour scheme on this quilt. Now, the back of this one is a sheet. Oh, it's got blood stains on it. Interesting. Okay, it was a sheet that I found at the op shop, and I'll do a close-up. It actually has a very fine vertical stripe. Not a vertical stripe as in a print, but where they make the weave slightly different. So one, it looks like shiny lines. Can someone tell me what the name of that is? But it's where, yeah, it's not necessarily a print. I don't think it's a print. It's more that the threads within the fabric are different. So we have that very fine, shiny line. It is a very smooth, soft fabric, especially after a few washes. And as you can see, I just did a grid, basically just a stitch in the ditch for this quilting of this quilt. And that worked fine. There are no slip stitches. I'm just having a look now. So one of the concerns about using sheets when I see other people's YouTube videos is that if the thread count is too high, means that the weave is tighter and the needle might have trouble getting through, or really just be different to what the weave on the front is, and it could cause your needle to slip stitches. But I'm just having a look at this now, and the stitching is perfect. There's no problem with the stitching on this one. My daughter loves sleeping under this because it is so soft, because sheets are usually a little bit softer than a quilting fabric. So it is quite a nice cozy way of backing a quilt. And they come in the large size. You're usually making a queen. You can find a queen sheet at op shops. Obviously I give them a good wash first because they are secondhand. You could also use old sheets in your own cupboard that you don't use to put on the back of your quilts. This one here that I did, ended up finishing last year. Now this is an interesting one. This one, the sheet that I used was like a tencel fabric. Okay, it was not, I don't think it was entirely cotton. If it was a very, very tight weave. It is super, super soft, almost like a bamboo. Maybe it has bamboo in it. I can't remember. Maybe it did, but it's like that really, really, really soft. Now this was white. This was white. This has been washed and it did not wash well. Probably because this is my son's quilt and he's 14 and a bit of a grub, as 14-year-old boys are. But I just feel like this, maybe I should wash this again. It's actually washed, I think it really was tight in the washing machine, and lots of the dirt has congregated in the stitch lines. It actually came out grubbier looking than when it went in. I also don't think it's as white as it was. So it's obviously picked up some of the black fabric dye, because I didn't pre-wash my black fabrics. So that's probably one that's a bit of a fail. But in terms of stitching and using it, like, let me have a look at these thread lines. I don't think I had a problem with slip stitches. No, the stitch lines are fine. Interestingly, I think the front has shrunk slightly, but not the back. So it is more, there's a bit more like room in each of these squares. So then when I first made it, it is incredibly soft, like way softer than even that other sheet, because it is that velour fabric, slightly bamboo-ish. My son though, like, I say all this, but like if you're making it as a gift, the children especially, They love how soft it is. Super, super soft. It is a totally different feel to the front. It is like gliding over clouds. It's that soft. So like my son loves it. I think having seen this in this video, I didn't actually realize like that is really dirty. So this is going to go in for another wash. I'm going to try and wash that again. Put that over there. All right, so the plan for today, for the rest of this video, is to sandwich this quilt. So, speaking of tencel, so this is a Sheridan. I found this at an op shop. This is a Sheridan quilt, and it says it's tencel. Tencel, so let's have a look. It is 55% lyocell, which is tencel, and 45% cotton. Interesting. So it's not as soft as that white one though. All right, so we are going to sandwich this together. I'm going to give this back in my sheet a little bit of a press under the iron first because it's very creased from sitting in my stash. I'll probably give my quilt top a iron as well. Do you want to have a little sneak peek what it looks like? This is what my last few videos have been about, this quilt, and I really loved it. I don't think I'm ready to stop making this design, so I'll talk to you about that in a second. And I've got my batting here. So maybe I'll just return when everything's pressed and ready to go. This is quite a large sheet, so I only ironed the half that I thought I'd use. Right side down. I love using my dining table to sandwich quilts. How quick was that? So this is a great dining table because it's so large. It has a glass top as well, so that's really good for when you're doing your safety pins, you're not scratching your wood. So these are the safety pins my mum gave me. Did you guys see that video where we pieced, no, I did it again, where we sandwiched my mum's quilt together, her scrappy block quilt, and we did it here at my house. And she had these pins, safety pins, but they were all left open. Someone in my comments made the comment that that's how they're supposed to be, so you can get them out and work with them. But they were all a tangled mess, and like they pricked my fingers, so I was having a good chuckle about that in that video. You can go and watch that. And in that, I sort of give more details also about how to sandwich your quilt on your tabletop. So since I've already done that video, you can go and watch that. I won't put as much detail into how I laid them out, but basically making sure they're smooth, the weight of the quilt and the backing and the batting over the edges of the table help to give it that flat surface. And I never spray my quilts in between with adhesive spray. I just use safety pins. So guys, I don't know how I'm going to quilt this yet. Haven't thought about it too much. So if you have some ideas, that would be helpful. I was So just heads up on my quilting style. I love quilting straight lines with a walking foot. I have tried free motion quilting a few times before. That star quilt had some free motion quilting in it, but it stresses me out. I get different sized stitch lengths, and that annoys me. I get so tense in my shoulders and it hurts my shoulders and back that I thought, why am I doing this? This is not enjoyable. So I do straight line with my walking foot. I love it. It always looks good. I'm always happy with the result. I can get it done quickly, and I have no guilt whatsoever that I'm not doing free motion quilting. So with that in mind, these are my thoughts, because it is smaller, so I don't have as much bulk to put under the machine. So I can maneuver it about a little bit more than when I do my usual larger quilts. So I could do, and now I don't want to stitch over these triangles because they are 3D. You can put your finger in it, so I need to keep that element. So I could either do like a 1/4 inch from the edge of that and do like a little octagon, 1, 2, 3, octagon shape in all of these white sections that would then lift these up as stars. Or I'm a bit over stitching the ditch, to be honest, because it never stays in the ditch and then it goes on either side of the fabric, and that looks a bit messy and that annoys me. I could go straight lines just right through the center of the 9 patch and the octagons, down that way and then down this way, but I'm not sure. So leave me a comment and give me your suggestions if you can work out how to word that, your idea, in words so that I could understand it. For now, I think what I'll do is I'll just put 1 safety pin in the middle of each of these squares. So I safety pin the top, obviously, that's on the table first, and then I can pull the 3 layers at a time and move it across to do the other edges. So you probably don't need to sit there and watch me do that, so I will speed this up for you, and we'll see you on the other side. Give everything a tug and push away from the center towards the edge. So I remembered that I wanted to tell you that I am not yet over this pattern. It's gorgeous. I absolutely love it. And I want to make another one because it's really got to me. I just love that scrappy 9 patch and then the snowball. So my plan, I'm not ready to basically stop making these blocks is what I'm trying to tell you. I have found a pattern on Etsy that is similar to this. I just sort of made this one up off the top of my head, but I found a pattern that is a stitched in snowball with the 9 patch and actually is separated stars. So if you've been watching my videos and following along, you know that I ummed and ahed between the separate stars or connected stars in this lattice style. And as you can see, I went with the connected stars. So it's more of a lattice and less like stars, but I can't get those stars out of my head. So that one was rusty, just throw that one away. I think I want to make it again, but stars. But this time I want to follow that pattern that I found on Etsy and have the stitched in snowballs. So I'm going to do it again. My question to you is, do you want to join me? If you want to make this quilt, go buy that pattern and we'll make one together. There's one, I'll put it here, I'll put the image up. One of the ones on the seller's page that is got light coloured scraps. So like a creamy backgrounds with then lots of little patterns on it. I really liked that. Or the dark, yeah, oh my gosh, there's so many options. So anyway, that's my plan. Moving forward, because I want to make it again with the separate stars this time. So this is basically, so see, that's a star there. And then you wouldn't have this 9 patch here would be the background fabric again, so that it would be separated, a separated star from that one and that one and that one. So that, yeah, it's basically less of the 9 patch. So yeah, let's do it again. Let's do it again. When I'm pinning these blue squares along the edge of the quilt, I'm actually pinning them right near the edge. And that will just, instead of the middle, like I've done all the others, just to keep the edge of the quilt connected and stretched out as much as it can. When I quilt, I always start sort of near the middle or running through the middle if I have edge to edge stitching. Make sure you hit subscribe so you won't miss the video of me quilting this. You can also put on your notifications so that YouTube tells you when it's posted. And we will quilt this on a domestic machine with a walk-in foot. I'll show you how I do that. And like I said earlier, let me know what you think I should do in terms of the quilting, and I might just use your suggestion. This one will be a lap quilt, and for the binding, I'll have heaps of this sheet left over, so I'm thinking the binding, because this sheet is a nice light blue. Oh yeah, that will be nice. The binding will be the sheet colour. I think that will work well, and that's what I'll have most fabric of. So this was really cheap actually to put together, this whole quilt, because the fabric in it was scraps. All these were scraps. I mean, this was some of it was like I'd bought the fabric and it was new and I was sitting there and just hadn't been used. But a lot of the other fabric had been used multiple times in multiple projects and are now getting to their last little bit, or hand-dyed fabrics, or fabrics that I went and, like scraps that I went and stole from my mum's scrap pile. So it was actually a very economical quilt to make this one, especially with that sheet idea. No backing fabric. Thank you guys so much for watching and sticking around to the end. I always appreciate it, and I just love reading your comments and responding to you. You're all so lovely and so thoughtful and always give me really good suggestions. So thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it. Please continue doing so, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks everyone.